Mississippi to Big Green and everything in between. We're talking about what's happening in your hometown. This is Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
All right, and welcome into Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV. Charlie Dern with you for the first half of the show this morning. Corey Sparks will be taking over the second half. Busy day around the office here, around the station for everyone here. But I'm really pleased to be joined by Will Fullwider. I promised myself I'd get it.
You did. You're there.
Well, Will's with the UW Extension, and we're going to be talking about the winter barley planting date trials, and I'm really excited to talk about that. Will and I previously talked on a community comment about a year ago, a little less than that probably, about the winter camelina cover crop that you guys were doing and all the research that you guys do over that at the UW Extension. So really excited to talk about that as well, with the winter barley, and there's some really interesting history with it all and everything going on alongside that. Hometown Today is presented by McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam, as well as professional floor covering, your floor, and so much more. Over at McKinstry's, their Friday the 13th could be the luckiest day of the year. Simply visit McKinstry's Home Furnishings this Friday, which happens to be the 13th of the month. During their Friday the 13th sale this Friday at McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam, enjoy incredible savings on every item in every department. With savings of up to 80%, sofas, recliners, mattresses, dining sets, area rugs, decorative accessories, and more are all on sale. Plus, take advantage of free layaway and no interest financing until March. McKinstry's will be closed all day today to prepare for the remarkable event tomorrow. Make 13 your lucky number when you find incredible savings on quality home furnishings. This Friday, the 13th sale the Friday the 13th sale at McKinstry's Home Furnishings, celebrating 166 years in downtown Beaver Dam. Well, 13 is my lucky number. That was always my sports number growing up.
Nice.
Yeah, baseball, basketball, I always wore 13. So 13 can be a lucky number for you as well. Head over to McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam. Will Fullwider and I will be talking about the winter barley and their planting date trials that are coming up here in Dodge County. And I guess other counties as well. So we'll be talking about all that and more here on Hometown Today on the other side of the break here on 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hey neighbor, this is Randy, owner of Professional Floor Covering, welcoming you back to Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Back into Hometown Today. That's like day 3 or 4 straight of me not putting in the bumper music. Apologies there. That's on me. Ultimately, Charlie Dern with you this morning. Amy Hudson will be back on Tuesday to pick the show back up. Corey Sparks will be taking the 10 to 11 o'clock hour. But 9 to 10 today, I'll be talking with Will Fullwider from the UW Extension. And Hometown Today is presented by Professional Floor Covering, your floor, and so much more. They're currently doing a free stainless steel sink with a quartz countertop purchase deal going on there. Randy and the team, they're always happy to help out with any project that you have around the house. They're located at 713 Park Avenue in Beaver Dam. You can visit them online at proflr.com or give them a call at 920-887-9972. And just a quick reminder, tomorrow we will be hosting a celebration of life for Bill McCullum from 4 to 7 p.m. at the American Legion in Beaver Dam. Everyone is welcome to attend that. You'll be able to view the private services for Uncle Bill on dailydodge.com beginning at 2 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So make sure to check that out on dailydodge.com. Will Fullwider with the UW Extension, welcome in.
Thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk to you again. Last time we talked, it was probably like October, November range. We were talking about the winter camelina plant or cover crop that you guys were doing a lot of the research. And I remember the PVC pipes and like the nitrogen and all that we were talking about. And I'm well documented to not being a STEM brain. The numbers don't really click with me. And I was joking with Jake Hayes, our production manager here. You sent me a really great outline of everything that's going on, and like it had the table, it had everything except for an abstract, and it reminded me of the ACT test.
Oh no!
And I always did poorly on the science one, and it looked exactly like this, where it was like a table and some reading, and it never worked out for me. But this one, I'm proud to say, it all made sense to me. So,
a little bit more writing, a little bit fewer tables.
Right. So, I guess I've come a long way. Maybe not, actually. But do you want to share a little bit about what we're going to be going over in the next hour?
Sure. Apparently, I like to talk about winter crops on the show with the camelina and the barley. But yeah, we're looking at winter barley as is it a viable option for farmers in Wisconsin? Which barley has a long history in the state. We used to produce hundreds of thousands of acres of barley back between the 30s and the 50s, or actually in late 1800s up into the 1950s. And that was for the beer industry. You know, we had some of the largest breweries in the world in Milwaukee, and to supply those breweries with malted barley, which is the source of the sugars that are fermented to make beer. A lot of that was grown in Wisconsin. And because of disease and more favorable growing conditions out and the kind of rise of corn as a more productive and profitable crop, that kind of moved out west. Now, what's interesting is as we've kind of experienced some of these warmer winters and there's been more breeding efforts around winter barley, that has become a more viable option here in Wisconsin. We used to grow spring barley, which competes with corn for that kind of summertime slot in your cropping system. The winter barley, it's harvested in mid to late June, so conceivably you could put in another crop behind it. So it's not competing with these summer crops like our soybeans and our corn to the same extent. So it's perhaps a more viable option, and it has a higher yield potential as well. So it's really new. There are not many farmers in the state planting it yet, which is one of the reasons that we, as Extension, can kind of take on the risk of planting something new and seeing if it could be viable for farmers here, because we are not trying to make a profit off these crops. We're trying to see, are they a viable option, and we're going to take that risk and see if it works.
And you mentioned the spring portion of it, and if I'm reading it right and remembering it all right, I believe that the harvesting time is the fall and the spring for them.
Yeah, so you're planting it in the fall, okay. The winter barley, and there are certain types of barley, certain varieties that are called facultative. Fancy word for saying you can plant it in the spring or the fall.
Okay, that's a great definition. Yeah, I was wondering that. I came up a little bit in the reading.
Yeah, and then the spring barley, it's not harvested all that much later than the winter barley. But what's nice about the winter barley is you have something growing out there on the landscape. It's a cover crop that you can harvest and make money off of. You know, you're not having to come kill it in the spring, and you know, not get something out of that cover crop that you're planting. So I think that's part of the benefit of it. There's something growing out there to take up nutrients, to keep the soil in place like we do with our cover crops, but you could also potentially make money off of it as well.
I see. And I guess I don't want to skip around too much between our previous conversation with the camelina and then now with the winter barley. But I guess with all the camelina research that you guys did, what did you learn from that? And was any of it applied to this research?
Yeah. Camelina's tiny seed. You know, it's there was definitely some difficulty. And camelina's, to kind of go back a little bit and remind folks that maybe weren't tuned in last time.
Sure.
Camelina is a brassica. It's like, you know, a cauliflower or a kale, that family of plants. And it is a very, very small seed, like a radish seed or even like an alfalfa seed. What's interesting about it is it can grow and overwinter and be planted at a time when not much else can in Wisconsin. Usually, as we move towards October, from a cover crop standpoint that will overwinter, we just have cereal rye. Maybe some winter wheat, but really cereal rye is our standby cover crop. Winter camelina could be another option. And the reason we're looking into it is if you plant it after soybeans, which come off a little bit earlier, harvested a little bit earlier than corn, can that be a cover crop option before our corn crop the next year? The reason for that is cereal rye can grow really quickly in the spring as it starts to warm up, and it can get away from you. And if you kill it too late, if you terminate that cover crop too late, as it decomposes, it's laying down on the soil, it takes up nitrogen from that corn. It kind of steals it from the corn, which means that corn crop may not grow as well. Camelina, it's a smaller crop. It doesn't get away from you like that cereal rye does. So is it perhaps a better option before corn in Wisconsin? So we did this research, and we're also looking at what cereal rye is really, really good at is scavenging or taking up excess nitrogen from our soil so we don't lose it. And nitrogen in the soil that's lost to groundwater has the potential to affect our drinking water, which is, you know, not good from a human health standpoint. And so that's why cover crops are important for our water quality too, is if we have cereal rye there, that'll help to take up some of that nitrogen and not release it to our water sources. But can camelina do the same thing? And so that's kind of what we're looking at, all these different aspects of it. And, you know, we're just coming into the final stretch of that research, looking at will the yield of our corn be affected by these two different cover crops.
Wow. I love the way you present things. And this is all off the top of his head for those listening and on Daily Dodge TV. Yeah, he's got no notes out in front of him. This is all off the top. How do you keep this all straight? I mean, that's kind of a dumb question, but you just did all that off the top of your head. And before we went on the air, I didn't even really tell you that I was going to ask you about the camelina.
I present on this stuff a lot.
Okay. All right. Fair.
I explain myself a lot. How about that?
That works.
To my colleagues and to farmers and to crop consultants.
You had mentioned that the warmer climate during the winter has kind of made it possible for this winter barley to come back into Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. This might be another dumb question, but what was the timeline on realizing that this could be something that Wisconsin could start doing? Totally.
So I'm not alone in looking at this. There are other northern states that are interested in winter barley, states that have currently a little bit bigger of a barley production in their states. For example, Minnesota and New York. Minnesota has quite a bit of production of barley for malting. And that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at. And that's interesting about barley is that barley it's a malting barley. You know, you can sell it, you get contracts. There are no contracts in Wisconsin, but in Minnesota, farmers have contracts with malting facilities that then sell that malted barley to breweries, to distilleries, whatever, and they get a pretty high premium for it. You know, it's double, kind of more or less double, a little bit under what our winter wheat sells for. So that's significant, right? And then the other aspect of it is as a feed source. So it's kind of cool. We have this dual purpose crop. You can feed it as you could take the whole plant and feed it as a forage and ensile it. Or you can also take the grain, and that grain actually has about 90% or more the feed value of high moisture corn. So it's also an alternative feed source as we're thinking about weather volatility. Like this year, we had this super, super wet spring and early summer. Last year we had a super, super dry spring and early summer, and now we haven't had very much rain for the past month, really, or month and a half at this point. So it's like, how can we spread risk out is one of the things that we're looking at. And like I said, we're not alone in doing this. Minnesota has had breeding efforts going on many years around trying to get a barley that can overwinter in their environment. And if it can work in Minnesota, they get colder than we do yet. And so it can work in Wisconsin, at least is the theory. And so we're planting out some of the varieties that they've been working on.
In the project rationale that you laid out for me, you mentioned the multiple pathways that the winter barley can provide farmers.
Yeah. So like I mentioned, there's the aspect of feed, and then there's the malting, and then there's also the forage. So it's 3 potentials there. And what's cool is that you don't have to make that decision really until later on in the season. Let's say it's getting to spring and you thought you're going to take it for a forage and it's just too wet out there. You can't get the equipment out there. You could just let it go to seed and then take that later on in the year where it may not be as wet, in kind of like that mid to late June time frame. So that lends farmers flexibility, so they're not forced to get out there at that specific time. And what's cool is if they send it in for malt analysis and it comes back, it hits all the parameters, because there's a lot of parameters that you need to hit from a quality standpoint to make it viable for malting. Malting is when they pretty much take the seed and they flush it with water and it starts to germinate, it starts to grow, and then they stop that. And what that does is the seed is taking all these starches that are stored up in that seed, converting them into sugar in order to feed that crop to then grow. But if you stop it, all those sugars stay there. They're not going into the crop growth. And then that is what the yeast ferments to make alcohol.
Wow.
So that's what malting is.
Okay.
It's more or less you're trying to germinate seed and stop it.
All right.
And it's also the same thing that's in when we drink a malted milkshake. That is malt flavoring, which is kind of interesting too. But
yeah.
That's all an aside. So if you can make the quality parameters, then you can sell it if you have a contract. And that's kind of also the key of it, is a lot of this malting barley is sold on contract, although there are spot markets as well. So that is a different aspect that would be new for some farmers that haven't dealt with contracts before. But what's interesting is the ability to be flexible in that, right? And to see, if it meets malt quality, perhaps I can sell it to that higher premium market. If it doesn't meet any of those things and I just have the feed barley, I can sell it for feed, which still, gets farmers money from a cover crop that they may not have otherwise gotten any profit from.
Got it. All right. Well, we have to hit break here real quick, but I'm fascinated by this. You make things really interesting for me. I don't know if it's the tone of voice or I don't know. You've got a comfortable vibe to you that makes all this really interesting and fascinating for me. We do have to head to break here on Hometown Today. Charlie Dern alongside UW Extension's Will Fullwide are here. We'll continue our conversation about the winter barley planting date trials that Will and his team are putting together here on Hometown Today, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hey, it's Randy from Professional Floor Covering. You're listening to Hometown Today on the 5,000 watt flamethrower on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
All right, welcome back into Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV. Charlie Dern in with you this morning. Amy Hudson will be back on Tuesday. Coming up, and Corey Sparks will be taking the 10 to 11 o'clock hour. We have the Columbus Redbud players coming in. Really excited to learn more about all that they have going on. I know they have a show coming up on the 20th, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, which growing up, that was an awesome movie. The Narnia movies were always great. And then they've got some haunted stories or local stories that they're going to be talking about. And then from 10:30 to 11, Annette, Kamps, and Ruth Conniff will be talking about the AAUW of Beaver Dam's summer reading program that they have, and it's coming to an end coming up here, where they'll have a discussion about the book Milked, which is a very interesting book about farmers and immigration in the state of Wisconsin. So really looking forward to hearing and learning more about those conversations. Hometown Today is presented to you by Professional Floor Covering, your floor and so much more, located at 713 Park Avenue in Beaver Dam. You can visit them online at proflr.com or give Randy and the team a call at 920-887-9972. Over at Professional Floor Covering, they also offer Pro Edge Sharpening, which is a division of Pro Floor Covering. Sharpen anything with an edge, sharpen it, don't toss it. Scissors, knives, saw blades, mower blades, commercial and personal tools. Pro Edge Sharpening Services is located at 713 Park Avenue in Beaver Dam. Give them a call at 920-887-8341 and online at proedge.com. Will Fullwider with the UW Extension is with me this morning, and we're talking about the winter barley planting date trials going on. And Will, we were talking over break there. It is still open for more farmers to join in on the trials. Yeah,
so those planting date trials are really, like I mentioned earlier, we're trying to take the risk away from farmers because this is an unproven crop, especially as you get later into the fall. So the planting date trials are going to be on at different county farms and at agricultural research stations, because we don't want farmers to plant something that's not going to come up. Right?
I see.
But if people are interested in either winter camelina or winter barley as crops, we do have more dependable varieties that we will be planting for these trials. And that window for planting winter barley goes until the end of this month, more or less, and then kind of into early October, maybe. So if folks are interested in the county in planting either of these crops for harvest for the winter barley or the winter camelina just as a cover crop, please reach out to me through UW Extension, my email, or my cell phone number. Should I say those on the air?
If you'd like.
Yeah, so any farmers can reach me at 608-220-3577, which is my work cell, or my email at will.fullwider, which is FULWIDER @wisc.edu.
They cut me off of my WISC email, so I can't get into it anymore. And I've actually run into troubles with it because some of those subscriptions and stuff that I have, they're on that email. Now I can't get in. Different problem. Not what we're here to talk about. But some of the dates that I have here, and correct me if I'm wrong about them, but post-corn silage, so September 15th, early soybean October 1st, and normal soybean October 15th.
Yeah, so those are kind of the windows that we're looking at for these planting date trials, because it's not just let's throw out a date out there and see what sticks. It's when do we have crops that are typically coming off our fields in Wisconsin, and conceivably when could farmers fit in this winter barley crop if they were interested in planting it. So harvest varies year to year depending on the weather, depending on what the spring was like, how early those crops got in. Because of the wet spring that we had, some crops maybe didn't get in on time, and so those will be a little bit later. But it's been super dry, and it's been pretty wet. Not pretty wet, super dry and pretty warm. Excuse me, those are contradictory. The last couple of weeks, last month, so that's speeding up as harvest as we move kind of into the fall. So corn silage, give or take 10 days, right? September 15th, and different varieties will be around that time. But we're going to start planting our trials which are actually being done at the Rock County Farm and up at Spooner Ag Station, all the way in the far north, to compare kind of what is a southern Wisconsin site and what is a northern Wisconsin site. And those will be planted next week, next Tuesday. That first round, we're planting 5 different varieties, 2 of which are strictly for malting, 1 of which can kind of run a malting feed barley, and then 2 other ones that are mostly for feed purposes. And so we'll be planting those 5 varieties next week, 2 weeks later, and the week after that to look at what does that look like from a winter survivability standpoint? Does that affect the quality of the barley as we come towards harvest? And then what does that look like in the end product?
I see, and I'm looking at the chart or the table here that you provided, and now that all it's coming together for me. Well, it's coming together for me.
The tables make sense with a bit of explanation, yeah.
And then real quick before we have to jump back into break, you did also note that to aid in all the harvest logistics, all plots are going to be harvested at the same time.
Right, yeah. And so that's, one of the things that's interesting about working on the county farms is equipment is sometimes a little bit harder to come by. It's not one of the agricultural research stations where everything is kind of there that the UW runs. So we're trying to figure out what works if it's planted all at different times, is it going to come to harvest all at the same time? And so talking with different techs that have worked with kind of other small grains at this research stations, where we will probably be able to harvest them all at the same time, which would again be in that if it's a pretty warm winter and it's dry, it could be mid-June, but probably kind of that later June timeframe.
And well, I just said we'd go to break, but is it frustrating having to navigate like all these different circumstances and scenarios with all the ag stuff?
Yeah, it's fun.
That's a good answer. Will Fullwider with the UW Extension here on Hometown Today this morning, talking about the winter barley planting date trials. And we're going to continue our conversation after we go to the Daily Dodge News Center. We visit Wade with sports and ABC News here on Hometown Today, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hi, this is Randy, owner of Professional Floor Covering, and you're listening to Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
All right, and welcome back into Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV. Charlie Dern with you this morning. Corey Sparks will be taking you the rest of the way here from 10 to 11 on Hometown Today. Hometown Today is presented by McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam and Professional Floor Covering, your floor, and so much more. Keep in mind, McKinstry's is closed today as they're preparing for their Friday the 13th sale. So big sale going on at McKinstry's tomorrow, all day tomorrow. So make sure to head over there, visit Sandy and the team. They're celebrating 166 years in downtown Beaver Dam, so they're a local staple here. And also keep in mind that tomorrow we will be hosting the Celebration of Life for Uncle Bill McCullum from 4 to 7 p.m. at the American Legion in Beaver Dam. All the public is welcome, and you'll also be able to view the private services for Bill on Daily Dodge TV beginning at 2 o'clock on Friday or tomorrow as well. Joining me today and the rest of the hour here, Will Fullwider with the UW Extension. We're talking about the winter barley planting date trials. Winter barley planting date trials. I got to get that down, Will. I'll get it down by the end of this. But we've still got a lot that we want to go over here before we head back to break. But one thing that we did mention at the very beginning of the show was the winter camelina research that you guys were doing, and some of the stuff that you learned from that and how it impacted, well, I guess your research with the winter barley. But one thing that I wanted to ask, and because it's different, is the winter camelina, if I'm remembering correct, you guys did that on farms.
Yes.
And the winter barley is not going to be on farms.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 100% open to any farmers that are interested in winter barley and want to plant it out. There's a farmer in Dane County that is planting it. I cover Dane and Dodge in my role, and there's a dairy farmer that's planting it to take it for feed. And I'll probably go out once he plants it, look at winter survival of the variety that he's planting, and take some kind of, maybe not quite sampling to the same degree that we're doing for these planting date trials, but take some measurements to see, on farms, what does it look like. But because this is a bit more laborious, we have 5 different varieties. We're planting it 3 different times, and we're doing it 4 different times for replication, so that if one fails, then we can kind of see across small scale, what does that look like? Because replication is important for science. It takes a lot of time to plant that, and I don't want to put that on any farmer. Unless you're really, really interested in making tiny little plots, hit me up. But yeah, we're really trying to do the basic research for what varieties grow well here in Wisconsin, and then we can take that and make recommendations in the future. And then that will then build kind of the foundation to work with farmers and planting it out at larger acreage.
And I'm kind of putting you on the spot with this question, so forgive me. But I guess at the end of the day, research is concluded. Mm-hmm. What are you hoping to find?
Yeah, I mean, one part of my goal in doing this research is to look at how can we regionalize some of our supply chains a little bit more from the agricultural sphere. We produce a lot of corn and soybeans in Wisconsin. We're also the dairy state. We produce a lot of dairy, which means that we have more diverse cropping systems than a lot of the states around us that are just strictly corn, soy. And we produce a lot of wheat too, especially in Dodge County, biggest wheat producer last year in the state. And so what I'm interested in is how can we expose ourselves a little bit less to the world market of these commodity prices. I don't have to tell farmers right now that commodity prices are very low, and it's making people sweat, right? For good reason. When you're getting, almost half of what you were getting a couple of years ago with some of these prices, it's not quite half, but it's getting down there. People are looking down and seeing that they're not going to make very much money, if any. And so that is because even if we have a bad year here in Wisconsin, bad yields, it doesn't necessarily mean that the price of those things is going to go up, because these commodities are produced on the global stage, right? Brazil, they can get in 2 crops of soybeans a year just because of their weather. Argentina also produces a lot of these products. So if they have good years and we have bad years, that price is still is dampened by their big harvest, by the amount of supply out there. So one of the things that we can try and do is how can we grow products that regionalize a bit of these supply chains that, feed the need for malting barley for the Midwest to feed the breweries that we do have here and the distilleries. And there is a history of malting in this state, like we mentioned earlier. And there are still quite a few maltsters in this state and around the region. How can we kind of gear ourselves to that so we're not as susceptible to kind of those external world commodity prices? And that's one of the reasons why I'm looking towards winter barley. And if it was just for malting, then it wouldn't be as interesting to me. But the flexibility of it as a possible crop for feed for our dairy systems and also for forage makes it more enticing.
The facultative aspect of it.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, exactly. You can plant it.
Nice.
Some variety you can plant in the spring, some in the winter. So the flexibility is interesting to me. And, the fact that we, as the university, can take on that risk and try out these different varieties. And if they don't work, it doesn't, it's not money that we have lost that we can't recoup. We have money for research. That's what we're here to do. And so to be able to take on some of that burden away from farmers and then build the foundation of that research to then make recommendations to farmers that are science-based is one of the reasons that we're here.
Okay, that's fascinating. When I'm looking at this chart here, so there's 3 malts and 2 feeds.
Mm-hmm.
I guess what I'm trying to think of here is the difference there. Are you comparing them with the research, or are you testing them differently?
No, they'll all be treated exactly the same.
Okay.
And it's just the varieties are bred to exhibit different characteristics. One of the things that's really interesting is when we think about fertility in our cropping systems. Usually, one of our most important nutrients, not usually, it is one of our most important nutrients is nitrogen, right? Nitrogen is the building blocks of proteins as well. It's also the building blocks of our yield. You put on more nitrogen, you'll typically get more yield up to a point with certain crops. Now, for winter barley and barley in general, it's interesting because if you're doing it for feed, you feed it more nitrogen, it gets more yield. It also starts to boost the protein as well, which from a feed perspective is great. You want more protein. And again, up to a point, you'll start losing money at a point because it'll kind of plateau the amount of nitrogen that is yielding dividends, marginal returns, right? From a malting perspective, it's different though. You don't want that protein. That protein is not, if you have high protein, you're kind of busting through some of the quality parameters that the maltsters are looking for. So they're opposite, which is neat because if you have a year in which for some reason you're running hot in your protein, you can just use that as a feed source. Whereas if you're running low on protein, it makes it more viable from a malting standpoint. There are other characteristics of barley that you have to meet, a lot of quality parameters in order to meet malting spec. For example, there is something called DON. I'm not going to try and pronounce the word that it is because it's very, very long, but farmers know it as vomitoxin, which doesn't sound good.
No.
And it's something that we deal with in our wheat as well. And DON is caused by the Fusarium fungus. It's called Fusarium head blight. It's the main disease that we have for our small grains in Wisconsin, and it's one of the main reasons why barley production left the state to begin with. Okay. It's a fungus that hits our small grains kind of right as we're starting to get into those humid days in late spring, and as these plants are flowering, that fungus can kind of invade the wheat head or the barley head. What's interesting about winter barley is because it's already planted in the winter and because it's harvested quite a bit earlier than wheat, almost sometimes a month earlier, there's the potential that it will be too advanced in its growth stage when we hit that humid window that Fusarium loves, right? So if Fusarium causes DON levels to spike, which is the vomitoxin, which makes it bad for our quality parameters for malting, then if we can skip that or avoid that by having everything shifted a little bit earlier in the year, that's a good thing. Then maybe we don't have to manage it as heavily with our fungicides that help to tamp down our DON levels, which are bad for feed and bad for malting. So that's something that they have in common. And then there's so many other quality parameters that I'm not going to get into because I don't really quite even understand them to that extent because I am not a malting expert by any means.
Fair.
I'm learning. Keep it in the field, in my opinion. that's what I know. So when we start to get to more of that quality stuff is when I lean on other people that are the experts there.
So you mentioned in your research here that states like South Dakota, Montana, and Idaho produce most of the country's barley. I'm curious, how much do you factor in their climate, their weather, and do you contact them at all, talk with them at all, or well, not the states as a whole, but the work that they're doing on barley and all that to kind of reflect on the data that you'll see with your research?
Totally. So they are in a totally different climate, right? When you start to get out to those plain states, it gets a lot more arid, a lot drier, which is not conducive to this fusarium fungus. That is the one that kind of pushed all of the barley out of Wisconsin. In a sense, that's simplifying things. But that was a big reason, was that disease, because it doesn't make it good for malting or feed for that matter. But I have not kind of been in contact with growers out there because they're dealing with different issues than we are here.
Okay.
You know, they don't have very much rain, and their rain falls at a very specific part of the year, and so they deal with irrigation out there. Not all fields are irrigated for barley, and they do a lot of spring barley, so winter barley is a different kind of totally different animal. But I have been in contact with people that are doing winter barley breeding efforts, like Dr. Kevin Smith at the University of Minnesota is the one that helped to do the work to release one of the barley varieties that we are planting, Minnesota Equinox, which is probably one of the most winter hardy of the winter barleys that we do have out there. So kind of in contact with him, in contact with different people that look at quality parameters, thinking of like, what would you like to see planted in these trials? I'm not just being like sitting back here and be like, all right, I like this one and this one and this one. You know, it's really trying to convene different stakeholders, from the kind of scientists also to the maltsters, thinking about what are people interested in seeing in this project is a goal for sure.
Sure. And then when, let's say, we get to the early spring or summer, where is all the research going?
Yeah.
Or how is that all being conducted?
Yeah. So we're going to plant again starting next week. It's what I'm excited about. I'm going to be sitting on the back of a drill with a vacuum, changing up the seeds quickly.
Quicker than the camelina.
Yeah, that's for sure. And then we'll do what's called stand counts. So we'll come back after it's poking out of the ground and literally count the plants in a certain area to see how many plants came up versus what did we plant. And then we'll do that same thing after the winter. So kind of in March timeframe when we've passed the majority of our super, super cold weather to look at winter survival. Pretty much how many of those plants are dead, how many of them are green, how many of them are starting to green up as they come out of winter dormancy. And so that's a real factor in winter barley is, can we get enough plants to survive to justify the planting? And like I said, some of these varieties a little bit hardier than others, and that would be more of our feed barleys. Some of these malting varieties were bred in like Virginia and other places, so they're not quite the continental northern climate that we have here, but that's why we're testing them to see if they are viable in our Wisconsin climate. So we'll do the stand counts. Then we'll also collect some of it for forage quality. So that's the whole plant, looking at if you fed this, would it be good for cows or sheep or what have you? And then we'll harvest it and then run the analysis on that grain for both malting spec to see does it meet those quality parameters that I mentioned earlier, and also from feed perspective, is it a good feed potential for our dairy systems or our beef systems in Wisconsin?
Part of your research, you mentioned that there is anecdotal evidence from a few farmers who have already begun this process of planting the winter barley. Yeah.
So there's a couple farmers. One of actually whose shirt I'm wearing today, funnily enough, Hugh Farms down in Janesville. He works with my colleague down there, Josh Kamps, and he has been planting winter barley for a couple of years. And he's a wheeler and dealer. You know, he sold barley straw as an algicide for use in pond remediation. And he's just like trying to figure out what are good markets for the barley. And he's trying to start up a tiny little malting operation with a couple of my friends as well. So there's other things going on in the background, absolutely. And he and another farmer in southwest Wisconsin, Lafayette County, have been growing winter barley for a couple of years. The one in southwest Wisconsin, Chris Wilson, is looking at it from a dairy perspective. He's like, I love this. It's feed. It's great feed. It comes off earlier than any other small grain that I would plant, and then I can plant soybeans behind it and get a full soybean crop. He's even doing what's called relay cropping, where in the spring he's planting soybeans into the winter barley, letting those soybeans and barley grow together, and then he's harvesting the barley over top of the soybeans, and then the soybeans grow up through the barley. So he's growing two crops at the same time in one field, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And that increases the yield potential of the soybeans versus, if you just planted them in kind of mid to late June. So that's really cool. And then Willie is planting it really for weed suppression is one of his main goals, which is something we didn't even talk about.
Yeah, if we could, if you want.
Yeah, we can go there briefly. But he's got a lot of the southern part of the state has issues with giant ragweed, big pernicious weed, and it emerges quite early in the season. So some of our cover crops that maybe don't have quite the biomass on when they're planted later after our corn soybean rotations don't have quite the biomass or the plant matter to help suppress those weeds. Winter barley, he's seen, has been really awesome at suppressing giant ragweed. So he uses it in his rotation to say, that's my worst giant ragweed field, and part of his farm is organic, so he can't depend on herbicides. He plants winter barley earlier in that field, kind of early September even, which is a little bit almost too early. But he's had great success with it. And he said that is the best weed suppression he's ever had on giant ragweed. So really for him, it's weed suppression. It's, then he has to wheel and deal and see what markets he can get for kind of that value-added barley product. So it's really cool. And again, the flexibility and the multi-use aspect of this as a cover crop, as a feed and molting source, and also as a weed suppressor.
I find it really interesting all the different uses that you guys and all the research that you get, well, and the farmers as well, get out of all these crops. And it's truly amazing. I never even would have thought that they'd use it as an algicide like that.
Yeah.
That would have never come to my mind. Well, Will, we only have a minute or two left here. Do you want to plug anything before we go?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about winter camelina and winter barley today, both kind of like odd crops, right? It's not our typical Wisconsin systems, but I cover crop and forage farmers across the county. I do a lot of nitrogen work and cover crop work, but if you have any questions or interested in, there's a question that you're asking, you don't know quite how to approach it or to find out the answer on your farm, feel free to reach out to me. Again, my work cell is 608-220-3577. My email, will.fulwider, FULWIDER, @WISC.edu. Questions, wanting to collaborate on research on your farm, that's what I'm here for.
Awesome. Thanks again for coming in. And all that information and all this is on the UW Extension's website as well. Very easy to find, very easy to navigate on the website, and as well as the contact information if you didn't catch it there. Will, thanks again for coming in this morning. It's always fascinating talking to you. Don't be shy to ever want to come back on the air.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Hometown Today is presented by McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam, located underneath the red awning. Check out their Friday the 13th sale tomorrow. They're not open today, but they're celebrating 166 years in Beaver Dams. They're a staple of the community. Make sure to go and support. And Hometown Today is also presented by Professional Floor Covering, your floor and so much more, located at 713 Park Avenue in Beaver Dam. You can visit them online at proflr.com or give them a call at 920-887-9972. Up next, Corey Sparks will be joined by the Columbus Redbud players as they're talking about upcoming shows and all that they have going on down there at with the theater group in Columbus. Charlie Dern, I guess I'm signing off for this morning, but Corey Sparks is joining the show at the 10 o'clock hour here on Hometown Today, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
To know your friends and neighbors, this is Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
10 o'clock hour here on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. I'm Corey Sparks, filling in for Charlie Dern from 10 through 11 here on Hometown Today. Previewing the hour, we will have the Columbus Redbud Players, a theater group out of Columbus, coming in to visit and talk about a couple of upcoming performances. And then back half of the 10 o'clock hour, we will have the author of Milked, that is Ruth Conniff, along with Annette Kamps, kind of previewing a story on how an American crisis brought together Midwestern dairy farmers and Mexican workers. Hometown Today on 95.3 WBEV is brought to you by McKinstry's Home Furnishings, and a reminder that the Friday the 13th sale could be your luckiest day of the year. That's quite the statement, because usually Friday the 13th, not so lucky, but Sandy and the team at McKinstry's putting a fun spin on it. Simply visit McKinstry's Home Furnishings this Friday, so tomorrow, which happens to be the 13th of the month. That is during their Friday the 13th sale. This Friday at McKinstry's Home Furnishings in downtown Beaver Dam, you can enjoy incredible savings on every item in every department. See, so it is lucky. We've got savings on up to 80% off for sofas, recliners, mattresses, dining sets, area rugs, decorative accessories, and more, all on sale. Discounted prices at McKinstry's Home Furnishings. Plus, take advantage of free layaway and no interest financing until the month of March. McKinstry's will be closed all day today to prepare for this remarkable event. You can make 13 your lucky number when you find incredible savings on quality home furnishings. The Friday the 13th sale at McKinstry's Home Furnishings. They are celebrating 166 years in beautiful downtown Beaver Dam. Also presented to you by Professional Floor Coverings, your floor, and so much more. The team over at 713 Park Avenue in Beaver Dam. You can contact them at their website at proflr.com or at their phone number 920-887-9972. They are your floor and so much more. Happy to help you with all of your interior design needs. And one more thing, folks, before we do kick off the hour with the group from Columbus, we will be hosting a celebration of life for Bill McCollum this Friday. So tomorrow, September 13th, from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m., and that is at the American Legion in Beaver Dam. The public is welcome to join us. I will be there. Our whole team will pretty much be there. Happy to talk with you and reminisce about Bill and all some great memories. You will be able to view the private services for Uncle Bill on dailydodge.com beginning at 2 o'clock tomorrow, Friday, September 13th. So we will welcome on the Columbus Redbud players, when we come back. This is Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hey, it's Randy from Professional Floor Covering, bringing together friends and neighbors on Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
And we welcome you back to Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. I'm Corey Sparks, filling in for Charlie Dern, who's filling in for Amy Hudson. We've got a good roulette of teammates going on here to make sure that we do cover this 2-hour slot. And we now welcome in the Columbus Redbud players. We have Kevin Miner, we have Kaylee, and we have Matthias. You guys are busy from what I'm reading. So you've got one performance coming up on September 20th through the 29th. That is going to be The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And then also Utterly Terrifying Tales closer to the Halloween season. But first, we'll just get to know you guys a little bit. Thank you for coming on. Kevin, if you could kind of just give us the synopsis of how you got involved in theater, and then we'll go down the line.
Sure. I mean, I always enjoyed performing growing up in like church plays and stuff, and I was involved in a couple in college, but then I wasn't really in theater for several years. And then about 7 years ago, the Redbuds put out a call for actors for It's a Wonderful Life as a radio-style play. And so my wife's favorite Christmas movie is It's a Wonderful Life. She's like, you have to go and audition for this. And I ended up with, 10, 13 different roles because it was in a radio style. So I had different voices for each character. And since then, been in various productions. We put on Rick Ramirez here in Beaver Dam wrote One Day, and I was in that. I filled in last minute for when we did 39 Steps several years ago. And then 2 years ago, I got a chance to direct, and I also had to act in it, but we did Agatha Christie's Rule of Thumb, so a collection of short mysteries. And now this is my second time directing for the Redbuds. So.
That is awesome. I played in band in high school, so that's about as close as I was to theater. I was never in theater, but we would be like in the pit, so we'd be able to kind of play music for the plays and stuff. Is that pretty common where you might be directing, but you're also helping on the acting front, and then you're helping with set design? Like, you're going to wear a lot of hats in any play.
You fill in where you're needed.
Okay.
It's been kind of nice this time to not have to be an actor as well, where I can kind of sit back, watch, and kind of make corrections as needed, and just help everybody do their best.
Absolutely. And then Kaylee, if you could kind of just let us know how you got involved in theater and maybe your role in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Growing up, I always loved acting. I was always a drama queen. So, this is my 11th play. So, I'm the unicorn in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. We just recently moved here, so we were looking for a drama group that was close, but never could find one except for the one in Beaver Dam, which we wanted a smaller group so we could grow. Mm-hmm. And one of my friends said that there is this production going on he was going to try out. And I was like, oh, cool. Well, where is it? And he's like, oh, yeah, it's just where I live, Columbus. And I'm like, oh, well, can I go? Can I try out? And he's like, oh, yeah, sure. You can just call these people. And so, we went and tried out, and it was a perfect fit, so...
That's awesome. So you said 11th play. So are the jitters kind of gone now? Like, by the time you hit play 10, you're like, I've done this. I'm fine. I'm a vet.
I love the stage. So, spotlight.
Yeah. Do you remember what your first play was?
My first play was Anne of Green Gables.
Ooh, okay. What were you playing in that?
Carrie Sloan. I was one of the girls that went to her tea party.
Awesome. And then we will move on over to Matthias. Big bar here. 11th play already for Kaylee. How many plays have you been in, and how did you kind of get involved in theater?
I've been in about 7 or 8 plays.
Oh, so you're up there too. 7 or 8 more than me.
I also started in Anne of Green Gables with Kaylee. I was the little orphan boy. I have always loved drama. I still get, stomach jitters every now and then because, of course, this is only my second time being in a main role. Mm. My most recent main role was, I was Michael Darling in Peter Pan.
Okay.
And now I'm being Edmund in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Awesome.
So I'm still kind of processing being in a main role. So I still get, stomach jitters every now and then. But acting has always been a good thing for me. I've always loved, playing pretend and whenever I get to do it like full out, I'm like, wow, this is almost real life. And I'm like, what if I could do this and I could do that in real life? It wouldn't be so hard. So, yeah.
I like that. So you kind of had like a passion to play pretend from, your early years, right? You're still in your early years, especially compared to me. My goodness. But so then you realize like, okay, well, if acting's an outlet, I can go do that, and then I was already playing pretend. Why not do it some more, right?
Yeah.
That's awesome. So we have The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe coming up. Columbus Middle School production. It is debuting on Friday, September 20th, and going until Sunday, September 29th. I'm seeing $10 ticket prices for those first 4 days, and then it goes down to $5 for the last one. Kevin, that's a nice touch.
So actually what it is it's $10 on Fridays and Saturdays at our 7 p.m. performances.
Gotcha.
And then our Sundays are matinees. They're 2 p.m., and those are the $5 performances.
Got it. Okay, thank you for that note. So that'll be the 22nd and the 29th. Those matinees on Sunday, 2 p.m. Those are the $5.
Correct.
Okay. So that is coming up in 8 days. My question for anyone can kind of take it with this one, but what does rehearsal look like right now? Like a little over a week out? Is it kind of just dry runs of everything now? Is it pretty full-fledged, or are you still putting the finishing touches on a few things?
We're still putting some finishing touches on.
Sure.
We've got some set pieces that are just arriving that we're just beginning to implement. We've only had about 2 practices so far with microphones and 1 with lights, so we're still kind of working through some technical stuff that side. But as far as props and lines go, everyone is doing great in that regard. So.
That's awesome. When did the rehearsal schedule and kind of preparing for this production start? We're talking weeks ago, a couple months ago?
So the Redbud board met back in the spring, probably February, March timeframe, and we were discussing potential plays that we might be interested in performing this year and timeframes and everything like that. And we had 4 or 5 that we were kicking around, and when I saw Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe pop up on the table, it just kind of stuck out to me immediately. I think I discovered the books about when I was about 4th grade or so, and they quickly became favorites. And so having the chance to bring something that I enjoyed so much to the stage really stuck out back then. And so then as the board, we continue to have discussions, try to figure out venue and when we could have auditions, all that kind of thing. And we eventually were able to reach out to the Columbus School District, and they were gracious enough to allow us the use of the middle school stage.
Yeah.
And so then we started, let me think, I had auditions about 2 weeks after 4th of July. I originally wanted to have it the week after, but then some stuff came up. We weren't able to have it quite then. So about 2 weeks after 4th of July, we did it, and by the next week, we were in rehearsal. So we've been rehearsing since 3rd week of July at this point. So.
Okay, yeah, that's a pretty quick turnaround too from auditions, and then all right, we got to hit the ground running. Like this thing is in mid to end of September, so that is awesome. Oh, I wanted to ask, we can go Kaylee then Matthias with this. Biggest challenge of the role that you're playing right now that you've encountered since end of July?
Probably figuring out how to be a unicorn.
Yeah, that's I think I would have trouble with that too. Yeah.
Because, well, you can look at the mythical unicorns and like watch My Little Pony or whatever.
Right.
But that's not what the unicorn is in Narnia.
Mm-hmm.
So just figuring out how to play the role is the most challenging thing.
And then Matthias, you said this is your second main role. So how has kind of preparing been a little different for you, for someone who's got some more lines this time?
Well, usually I'm used to having like only 2 or 3 pages of lines, maybe 4. So I've always had to work hard to study, but I have a pretty good memory, so as long as I study them for about a week or 2, I can always get them.
Mm-hmm.
However, if but sometimes I accidentally memorize other people's lines too, and so it really makes me like upset when other people miss their lines when it's about to be my line, and I'm like,
You're like, I know
you
that.
forgot that. You forgot that. So
That's pretty impressive. So you're memorizing your own, and then you like, well, I know the cue in, right? I know the in cue, or I'm sure that's not the term for it, but I know what's coming before and then after. So you kind of have to understand, and that could go for all of you, like with, all right, this is every page of the book, if you will, and if the one before this one doesn't go well, you know, we're off the tracks. So I did see, and Kevin, you and I talked about this a little bit right before we cracked the mics. There was a need for production crew members, but it sounds like that's down to just makeup. Any other?
Yeah. If we have a lot of animals,
Okay.
And so we could use some help getting the kids, like a face painter, just helping the kids become, a leopard or an owl or some kind of fantastical creature that they're going to be portraying on stage. So.
That makes sense. We can't exactly go out and find a unicorn on the street right now. I haven't seen one, so we gotta do some transformative stuff with Kaylee here. So 8 days out, I guess just general emotions. Like I know, Kevin, you said the initial audition was around the 4th of July, and then you kicked off rehearsals right after. How does it feel kind of starting to see, you're using mics, the lighting, the whole production come together?
Yeah, it's been exciting. I mean, as we entered August, and into the back half of August, especially, I was starting to feel, stressed and behind. Like, is this really all going to come together in time? And, especially like I said, we had originally hoped to have rehearsals a week earlier, so I felt like I had lost a week.
Sure.
And, but no, as we come into this last week, I'm definitely feeling like we're in a much better place, and I'm very encouraged by what I'm seeing in practices these days.
Awesome. And speaking of finishing touches and putting, people in spots where they can apply makeup and you need more help in that department, what's a good email or like a way to contact you guys on, hey, I'm interested, I can help. How would they get a hold of you?
You can reach out to us at columbusredbud@gmail.com, or you can find us on Facebook at Columbus Redbud Players.
All right. We will do the final details on that one more time, and then we'll take a break, come back, and talk about Utterly Terrifying Tales. That is a phenomenal name. From Friday, September 20th until Sunday, September 29th, $10 for the more weekday, well, not weekday, I guess, because there's a Saturday in there, too, but the later performances, right?
Yeah, the Utterly Terrifying Tales, I believe, is only 2 Saturdays.
Okay, perfect.
And they start at 4 p.m., and yeah, $10 each Saturday for those as well.
Perfect. So we will preview that in a moment, but The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Columbus Middle School production, we have that launching in 8 days. So from Friday, September 20th to Sunday, September 29th. I do have Kevin Miner, Kaylee, and Matthias here with me. You guys mind sticking around? We'll talk about another play coming up pretty soon.
Sounds good.
All right, awesome. This is Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hi, it's Randy from Professional Floor Covering, bringing you Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
And we welcome you back to Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Hometown Today is brought to you by our partners over at Professional Floor Covering. Randy and the team make sure it's your floor and so much more, turning out phenomenally. They are over at 713 Park Avenue in Beaver Dam, proflr.com, the website, 920-887-9972. And as mentioned before, make sure you take advantage tomorrow of the Friday the 13th sale going on at McKinstry's Home Furnishings in beautiful, historic downtown Beaver Dam, celebrating 166 years of service in downtown Beaver Dam. I am here with some members of the Columbus Redbud players. We have Kevin Miner, Kaylee, and Matthias. Upcoming production, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. And did just want to quickly preview, there is another performance a little further down the road. It's called Utterly Terrifying Tales, Haunted Barn. That starts on Saturday, October 19th, and finishes the next Saturday, October 26th. So right up until that Halloween part pretty much. That's at 7556 Marshall Road. They are looking for local spooky ghost stories or Halloween stories. And Kevin, I'm reading if they use someone's story, they get a free ticket. That's a pretty good opportunity.
Absolutely, yeah. If you have something, especially from the Columbus Beaver Dam, area that is kind of spooky, our organizers for that event are looking for you.
Awesome, and that is columbusredbud@gmail.com. If you do have a story, getting a free ticket. I've never heard of that. That's an awesome idea. So previewing that one, we might have some individuals on in the next couple of weeks, or leading into that October phase of, just previewing Utterly Terrifying Tales a little bit more. I want to toss it back to you, Kevin, and then we can kind of go around the table again here with Kaylee and Matthias on. So you said initial auditions were around July 4th, and then a little over a week later, you got going with rehearsals. How have you seen this group grow, not just within the production, but, mesh a little more as a group? Maybe some kids who haven't seen each other before, all of a sudden they've seen each other a lot the last 2 months, and maybe they're friends now.
Sure. It's been really interesting as a director because we have multiple members of the cast. This is their first production ever.
Okay.
Our Aslan, it's his first production. And it's been fun to watch them grow from that uncertainty when we first get them up on stage to definitely showing a lot more confidence, especially now that we're beginning to add like costumes and props. You can see them realizing that it's becoming more real, that, hey, we actually are going to do this. And it's a fun experience to kind of sit back and watch and help guide their journey through it.
And then, Kaylee, you had said, moving into the Columbus area, kind of new, but you still wanted to be involved in theater in some capacity. How has your experience with this play gone so far, and how have you noticed maybe yourself growing a little closer within the group?
Well, I live in Randolph.
Okay.
But Aslan, he's one of my friends. He lives in Columbus.
Sure.
Going into this group, it was really cool to see, new people who are interested in drama coming and, trying out and watching them grow, because I'm used to drama and also helping them a little bit. But I just love, as they get into the character, watching the story unfold and just Narnia come to life. So everything, it's just pretty.
Yeah, and everything's kind of coming together now, just being 8 days out. And then Matthias, with you, I kind of have a question on, you said this is your 7th or 8th performance, right? How do you think you've grown, again, second main role, but even from those early performances, how do you think you've grown from the person who stepped on the stage for the first time until now?
Well, I've definitely learned how to project more. I used to be all a very small, quiet kid. During Prince and the Pauper, my about 3rd play, I think, I had to yell my line, otherwise I would not be heard.
Oh, jeez, okay.
Because I was such a quiet kid that if I didn't yell, they would just hear.
Yeah. They gotta know what you're saying.
So I had to step up and yell my line. And even then it was only normal talking to everyone else. Mm-hmm. But now that I am I have grown in drama a lot, I have realized that there's a lot more important things than just costumes and make-believe props or anything. It's about getting to know your fellow actors and knowing how to cooperate together and having fun.
Absolutely. And Kevin, I'll toss it back to you. Do you feel like this is a pretty tight-knit group, especially compared to the group that you put together for the first time in July?
I've seen them come together and grow some friendships.
Yeah.
I would say they're the ones that know each other are getting, they're forming closer bonds. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we are leading up to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, a performance. Kevin had said, a few were kind of brought to the table. This really stuck out to you, and that's the one you guys went with. And that is going to be from Friday, September 20th through Sunday, September 29th. $5 on the 22nd and the 29th, and then $10 on the 20th, 21st, 27th, and 28th. How big is this crew? Like when it comes to set design, makeup, the staff you're looking for, like how many people are working on this?
Well, we've got around 20 actors, and by the time we add in other people, we'll probably have another 10 or so. By the time we add in ticket takers, people from makeup, stage crew, and so on. So,
for someone who might be interested, they understand what The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is. Again, I wasn't involved in theater or anything like that, but that stuck out to me right away. I'm like, okay, that's a household phrase right there. People usually know what that is. What's each of your pitches to people who might be on the fence? Like, I might want to go, but I'm not sure. We'll start in the middle if you'd like. Yeah. Otherwise.
Oh, okay. If you like seeing the story come to life and watching what you grew up with, come see it just once.
Yeah.
And if you hate it, then, well, I guess don't come to us again.
I'm sure you guys will be great, and you never know if you try, right? So that should be a fun, collaborative environment. And actually, Kevin, there was a summer theater camp around a week or so over this last summer. For those who might be interested in developing their skills, what is some of those workshopping opportunities?
Sure. So each summer we typically do a 1-week theater camp for the kids. Usually, kind of first grade through high school. And typically what we'll do is for the younger kids, we'll usually adapt like a children's story into a brief play that they can put on that Friday afternoon. And then for the teenagers and older kids, we often will do like an improv camp. And then they will perform after the children's play as well. Or sometimes, depending on the amount of kids we have, we might group them all together and do one. It just kind of depends on how many people we have that are interested. But yeah, that's each summer. If you're interested in that, definitely watch our Facebook page. Columbus Redbud Players. In regards to Lion, the Witch, and Wardrobe, why to come see it? I mean, there's a reason that these stories have been so popular the last 70, 80 years since they were written. They really speak to us, and the themes in it of courage and redemption, they're all worth coming in and experiencing. So.
Awesome stuff. And you had mentioned the theater camp. That's a great way to develop. You'd also said at kind of the beginning of our conversation today, Kevin, that there was a hiatus, but you were involved in theater in high school, I assume, beforehand? Or
my high school didn't have theater group.
Okay.
So I did some for like our church. We would put on
Sure.
like a Christmas play each year. But then I was involved in college. I was in Arsenic and Old Lace, and I'm forgetting the name of the other one I was in at the moment. But that really just kind of reignited my love for theater. And once I got married, it took us a long time to find a local theater group that we could get involved with. And then, like I said, my wife just happened upon an ad on Facebook for actors one day, and the rest is history. So
that's awesome. Probably a pretty full circle kind of stage in your life at this point, taking more leadership roles, directing, and overseeing a lot of these awesome productions that are coming up.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I want to thank all three of you guys for coming on. I do appreciate it. Kevin Miner, Kaylee, and Matthias, you guys have all been great, and I look forward to the performance. 8 days away. Got to be feeling pretty excited.
Oh, absolutely.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. One last time, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, Columbus Middle School, from Friday, September 20th until Sunday, September 29th. $10 on the 20th, 21st, 27th, 28th, $5 for those Sunday at 2 p.m. Viewings. They are still looking for production crew members, specifically in the makeup department, so you can send over an email to @columbusredbud@gmail.com or columbusredbud@gmail.com. Thank you guys so much for coming on. Appreciate
Thanks
it.
for having us.
Of course. Best of luck to you. And this is Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
Hey, this is Randy from Professional Floor Covering, welcoming you back to Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge.
And welcome to the final segment of the show here on Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge, and brought to you by Professional Floor Covering, your floor and so much more, and McKinstry's Home Furnishings. Ahead of their Friday the 13th sale tomorrow, they are celebrating 166 years in beautiful historic downtown Beaver Dam. Also a reminder, we will be hosting a celebration of life for our very own Bill McCollum this Friday, so tomorrow, September 13th, from 4 p.m. until 7 p.m. That is at the American Legion here in Beaver Dam. The public is more than welcome to come and mingle, talk to us, reminisce about Bill. Looking to make some good memories there in his name. And you will be able to view the private services for Uncle Bill on dailydodge.com beginning at 2 o'clock tomorrow on September 13th, Friday the 13th. We do have a couple of members associated with Milked. We have the author, Ruth Conniff, on the line. We have Annette Kamps, and we have Andrea Utri here. Thank you to all three of you for joining me today.
Thank you. Thank you for
Great
the
to be
time.
here.
All right, we've got Ruth on the line. Ruth, how are you doing?
Doing well, thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, first off, for lending your time to us. I did want to kind of just talk a bit about the book. And so I read the synopsis. You know, it's on the shrinking of dairy farms in the Midwest, how that kind of developed a dynamic between farmers and migrant workers. What inspired you to write a book on this as you were kind of observing this going on?
Well, you know, I went with my family. We took our 3 daughters to Mexico for a year. We just moved there for a year because we wanted to have a cultural immersion experience in another country. This was shortly after Donald Trump became the president, and we just thought it was a great time to get out of the United States and see our country from abroad and sort of experience, have that cultural experience for our kids. So as we were getting ready to leave to live in Oaxaca, Mexico, I read an article in the Wisconsin State Journal about a Mexican family that was packing up their truck and moving back to southern Mexico where they were from after a couple of decades working on a farm in Wisconsin. And it fascinated me because it was in that article that I first learned that a big majority of workers on Wisconsin dairy farms are undocumented immigrants from Mexico. They're undocumented because there is no visa for year-round low-skilled farm work. There's seasonal farm work visas, the H-2A visa program in this country. But if you're milking cows and you're from another country, you know, it's very unlikely that you are here on a legal visa because they haven't passed one through Congress despite numerous attempts. So this family was going back to Mexico. We were going to Mexico, and I just found that really interesting. And so I contacted the reporter who did that story, and she put me in contact with a bunch of her sources, and I learned about a group of Wisconsin and Minnesota dairy farmers who were traveling down to Mexico every year to visit the families of the workers on their farms and see the homes and businesses, schools and roads that they were building with the money that they were making milking cows up here. And I just found that relationship between these two groups of rural people absolutely fascinating. So I got, deeper into the story when I was in Mexico. I visited some of those workers who had gone back, and I visited the farmers when I came back to Wisconsin, and I took one of the trips that this group, Puentes Bridges, which is a nonprofit based in western Wisconsin, takes every year. And I just learned more and more about, I think, a kind of an under-the-radar relationship, the degree to which the Wisconsin dairy industry is completely dependent on the work of undocumented immigrants, and, the very close personal relationship between farmers here in Wisconsin and those immigrant workers.
I don't want to give up too much about the book, but were you able to kind of uncover how long, roughly, this relationship's been going on between rural farmers in Wisconsin or the Midwest in general and some of these families looking for opportunity?
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is that it hasn't been that long, and so as a reporter, you can go and talk to people who were some of the first farmers to hire immigrant workers. And it started really around the late 90s, early 2000s, and it was because of this tremendous pressure on farms to get big or get out. You had family farms that had 50 or 100 cows, and they were suddenly expanding to 300, 500, 1,000 cows. They were hiring people for the first time. And the farmers I interview in my book tried really hard to hire American workers to work with them, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, milking cows, shoveling manure, putting in those long hours. The cows never stop giving milk, so you really can't take days off. And they did not find a lot of takers for those jobs. And a lot of them were feeling pretty desperate. And what they did is they began to hire immigrant workers who had been here working as seasonal workers in the Christmas tree farm industry. And those folks wanted year-round work. They were happy to do these kinds of jobs. And they came over into dairy and now make up, according to the latest survey by the University of Wisconsin, 70% of the labor force in Wisconsin dairy farms.
Well, that's very interesting because you can kind of identify the need right away between those two groups. You have the farmers going, well, we're trying to hire domestic, and it doesn't look possible. No one wants to get up. And again, these are long hours. It's not an easy job. Like you said, the farms are expanding. And then you have the migrant workers. I mean, yes, Christmas trees, that's pretty seasonal work. They're going, well, we need sustained income throughout the whole year.
Yeah. Yeah, and the thing is, because it has gotten harder and harder and more expensive to go back and forth across the border, one of the unintended consequences of our immigration system and border, the militarization of the U.S.-Mexico border is that we have people staying in this country for a much longer time than they had planned. It's a really long-standing tradition that Mexican workers would come follow the crops and go back to Mexico, and that they're not really working towards an American dream, they're working towards a Mexican dream. They're making money here, quite a bit more money than they could make back in Mexico, and saving it and using to pay for their kids' education, for building a house, buying a car. Now that kind of long-standing practice is taking decades out of their lives, where they're staying here until they have enough money that they feel they can afford to go back, knowing that they may never get back here again.
Well, this is a very compelling story, and there's a great opportunity for this community. I see, Ruth, you grew up in Madison. Well, we're about 35, 40 miles from there, pretty close to where you started life, and there is an opportunity at the BDACT Fine Arts Center on 117 West Maple Avenue here in Beaver Dam on September 18th, and it'll be at 7 p.m. for a community discussion of this. And I can pass this around depending on who would like to answer as well, but kind of what was the motivation behind getting the community together to kind of have a collaborative environment going? And we do have our very own Kevin Haugen here at WBEV, the news director, moderating it. What was the inspiration for putting something like this together?
Well, this has been an ongoing project, a community summer read for the last 3 years. And each year we look for a book that we'd like to promote within the community to build awareness and education about different social issues. So one of our members of our committee, which now includes not only AUW members, but some community members as well, which is part of our goal, one of them recommended Ruth's wonderful book. And the more we looked into it, the more we thought it'd be very exciting. Ruth has a long, impressive resume, which you might like to share with also. But Andrea and I visited Ruth in Madison and talked to her about this possibility, and she's been very generous with her time. And each year we've increased attendance at the auditorium, the BDAC Fine Arts Center, to hear the author speak or a panel speak, and to engage the audience directly with questions and interactions. So it's been very successful. We're hoping this year, since it's in the auditorium, we'll have even more attending.
Absolutely. Andrea, I guess your response, and again, we do have two members, Annette Kamps and Andrea Utri, from the 2024 American Association of University Women's Summer Reading Program. Your response to bringing something like this that's very close to home for Ruth, but also something that's very relevant in Wisconsin. This story takes place in Wisconsin, in the Midwest.
In fact, some of our community members might even recognize some of the names that are
Really?
in the book.
Very close to home.
Although it's based more on a project called Bridges from northern Wisconsin. But we know that there's farms in Dodge County, and we just thought it was very relevant to make the community more aware of immigrant labor. Our whole focus for these summer reads is to bring unity to our community and make everyone feel welcome and have a sense of belonging.
We are here speaking with author Ruth Conniff from the book Milked, How an American Crisis Brought Together Midwestern Dairy Farmers and Mexican Workers. And then we also have Annette Kamps and Andrea Utri, from the American Association of University Women's Summer Reading Program. Ruth, when you were approached with this opportunity to have your work discussed not far from home again, and I will go over your resume here a bit. It's quite impressive. You've got a BA in philosophy cum laude in 1990 at Yale, ran track there, edited in the Campus magazine, so you've been around journalism for a very long time. Your experience in that department, and now you're in Maple Bluff, Wisconsin. When you were approached with the opportunity to have this story told not far from where you're from, in the same state that where you're from, what was your response?
Yeah, I was delighted. I was really happy to accept, and I have done book events around Wisconsin and Minnesota, some of them with some of the people in my book, and I just think it's a very appealing story of these farmers and these immigrant workers, because it's very different from the picture you might get from national politics. There's a really warm relationship there, and also a sense in which we're all in the same boat. You really see when you look at this connection between Midwestern dairy farmers and Mexican workers that they're two groups of people who are both rural people. They have an agrarian past, which makes them feel like they have a lot in common. And they're in the same boat in terms of, the pressure that they're under from global economic forces beyond their control. The farmers, we are in the #1 state for farm bankruptcy in the United States here. We've lost half our dairy farms, since the early 2000s. And the workers obviously have been desperately seeking jobs and walked across the border, have really dramatic stories of trying to find work. And then these two groups of folks have come together in a way that's really interesting and really quite counter to the very heated political rhetoric that we're hearing these days about immigration.
And Ruth, you already answered my next question like a true professional, but I was going to ask next, and maybe there's more to it than just that, what some of your goals were in writing this book. Obviously, you mentioned the common misconception that these two groups may not get along, when in fact they have a lot more common ground than most may think, depending on where they're hearing information from. What else were you looking to accomplish with telling this story that really hadn't been told before?
Well, I just feel like it's important to get down to this human level, to get out of the 30,000-foot view of politics and economics and really see how we're all affected by the systems that we live in. And I really liked the unexpected friendship between these two groups of people, because I felt like that was something surprising and fascinating, and it really kind of animated my interest in the book.
So a phenomenal opportunity for those in and around Beaver Dam, the 3rd annual Summer Read Unity and Community Program centering around Milked. That is how an American crisis brought together Midwestern dairy farmers and Mexican workers, two groups that have a lot more in common than maybe some may originally think, and Ruth does a great job of diving into that. If I could pass it back off to Annette and Andrea, I'm seeing it's not required that someone reads the book. Would you recommend it? Or, what kind of questions should individuals kind of be coming into this discussion with if they're not reading the book?
Well, we're definitely recommending
Absolutely.
it. It's an easy read and very informative. In fact, as I've talked to different people who have read the book, they were totally unaware of the statistics involved and the kind of relationship that Ruth is referring to, and extremely interested. And not only will, I shouldn't say not only, but following Ruth's presentation, we're going to have a brief follow-up commentary from a representative group of panel of people from the area who have different perspectives and experiences in working with the farmers and the workers. And then that will be followed with a question and answer period for the audience, so the audience will have an opportunity to ask Ruth and the panel questions. But if they have not read the book, that is not a problem. I know Ruth will cover a lot of
From
territory
Margazan
in
to
her
Marshall, Fox
presentation.
Lake to Fall River, Watertown
But
to
again,
Waupun,
we
and
highly recommend
everywhere
it,
in
and the
between.
library has multiple copies. And we distributed about 42 copies to different organizations in the community at the beginning of the summer, encouraging them to read the book and to pass it on to others.
Well, that is awesome stuff. Annette Kamps, Andrea Utri, and Ruth Conniff, the author of Milk, How an American Crisis Brought Together Midwestern Dairy Farmers and Mexican Workers. I appreciate all three of you coming on Hometown Today today.
Thank you for the
Thanks for having us.
opportunity.
Of course, thank you all. This has been Hometown Today on your hometown station, 95.3 WBEV, powered by Daily Dodge. Have a wonderful day.